This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 464.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. We have the technology.
Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Serve, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. We have a Wordcamp next weekend. Awesome. Wordcamp Zaragoza. It's in Spain, January 20th through 22nd. By all means, go if you can. I wish I could go. I'm not going to be able to make it. So there's that. Moving on, segment one in the news. A couple things here to talk about. Peepso over at Peepso.com announced 5.3.6.0 released. Multiple bug fixes to the core plugins and integrations. It's also their 203rd version ever to be released. In it, they say they packed more fixes for file uploads plugin as well as other core plugins. And I mentioned this to you because on the bottom of the email that I got, it said, "Are you ready?" in big bold letters. And so I checked in, I'm like, what's that mean? I clicked the button. It says, this release will be followed shortly by another, a much, much larger one. Get ready for something quite extraordinary, which piqued my interest because I did an episode back on, a review on Peepso back in episode 256. Might be time to revisit that, see what's coming or what comes out when this next one comes out. And for those who don't know, Peepso is a social networking, kind of like a Facebook, but using WordPress. So you have your own control of your own world there for a social type of network. So check it out. It's over at peepso.com. But I will probably more likely do another update review on that because apparently something quite extraordinary is coming out. So there's that. Also in the news, a few weeks back, I mentioned that Classic Press was going to possibly have a fork. There was an update there. So apparently they did a vote regarding reforking or continuing as they are. And the reforking came back with 20 votes. Continuing as is was 18. So with close voting, there's an ongoing discussion and a post over on their forums.classicpress, I think .com. I'll double check that. Link in the show notes. So if you're interested in seeing what's going on with Classic Press, if you're still using that, by all means, check that out and pay attention over there. I think, is that it in the news? Yeah, that's it in the news. Moving on, segment two, the meat potatoes of this week's episode. This week, I interview Michelle Frechette. For those who don't know, Michelle is awesome. She's a good friend of mine. We talk at least once a month. Take a listen. After that, we'll come back and I'll give the tip and tool of the week. Take a listen. Here she is. Today, I am joined by Michelle Frechette. Michelle is the Director of Community Engagement for Stellar WP at Liquid Web. In addition to her work there, she's also the podcast barista at WPCoffeeTalk.com, co-founder of UnrepresentedInTech.com, creator of WPCareerPages.com, the president of the board for BigOrangeHeart.org, director of community relations, and contributor at PostStatus.com, co-host of the WP Motivate podcast, co-host of This Week in WordPress podcast, author, business coach, and frequent organizer and speaker at WordPress events. She lives outside of New York, Rochester, New York, that is, and is an avid nature photographer, and is just an amazing human being. Welcome to the podcast, Kitchen Sink WP. Michelle, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. You forgot. I have my favorite new title was the one that Matt Mullenweg gave me at Wordcamp US, which is Busiest Woman in WordPress.
Busiest Woman in WordPress. You know, it's true. That might be the longest intro I've ever done in 8.5 years of this podcast and dozens of interviews. And yeah, that's a long one. So
it's a little pretentious. I apologize.
But, you know, I pulled it from Twitter, obviously. No, LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile. That's where I pick and choose. But it's true. You are busy. You and I are very much alike in that sense that we like to, you know, have our hands on many things. But for those who listen to the podcast, I always like to tell the audience how I might know the guest. In this case, we have met in person many a time. We have had many of hugs. Yes. But I don't remember when we met first. I'm sure it must have been a WordCamp in person pre-pandemic. But I felt like I've always known you. Do you recall like when we met first time in person?
So I'm sure that we had come across each other's paths earlier than this. But the first time where I was like, oh my God, it's Adam. Hi, Adam. I'm Michelle. Whatever, was at WordCamp Kent.
Oh my gosh.
Years ago.
Yeah.
And we kind of knew each other through social circles, but it's the first time that we actually sat down and had a conversation together.
Okay, that would make sense. Yeah, when I flew out that was before, it was Kent after it was called Northeast Ohio.
Right. And now it's Northeast Ohio again, I think.
I think,
So,
yeah, it's going back and forth. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
okay, that's what it was. I couldn't remember, when it was. That's the
You and
problem.
Kyle, like you guys are, when you're together, you're almost inseparable. So it was hard to get a word in edgewise. But,
That would be Kyle Maurer for those who are listening. Yeah, he and I, he's busy as well, but he's not as busy. He's busy with kids. He has like 6 kids now,
yeah, God bless him.
which is amazing. Salt of the earth, and
Yes.
he has a ticket right in with the big guy, if that's your thing.
Such an amazing person.
He really
Yeah,
is,
he really
and
is.
Ashley as well. So, all right. So with all that figured out, on to the questions I have for you. I want to be respectful of time. So, of course, want to know, how did you get here? How did you get into WordPress in general, like the broad stroke?
So it's an interesting story. I've told a few different ways, a few different times. The bottom line is it was spaghetti. The whole way I got into here was spaghetti. My best friend and I, she was a massage therapist. I worked at a massage therapy school. And she came to me and she said, I want to start an organization that helps massage therapists continue their careers. Once they graduate, they are pretty much just turned out without any support. So we started something which is now defunct. We've kind of walked away from it, but it was called the Rochester Massage Alliance. And her husband made us a website. It was made, this was before mobile responsiveness was a thing, because nobody even had smartphones yet. But it was built on Genesis, and it was a website, and we started sending him the content, and he's like, yeah, hold your horses there, ladies. Here's your login.
Okay.
I gave you the infrastructure. Here's how you do it. And I remember logging in the first time, feeling like a stranger in a strange land, afraid to break anything, afraid to offend the internet gods by anything that I might do. And by the end of the first day, I was like, I hit publish, and the things I write are available on the internet for the whole freaking world to see. Yeah, let's just say that I was enamored very early on. And from that first website, thought I could build websites. And so I said to him, look, I understand how I purchase a domain, and I understand that there is hosting, but how do I actually make a website appear in my hosting? And so he said, tell you what, Christine's working late Thursday night. You come over, you make dinner for the kids, and I will teach you how to do that. And so I went over and made spaghetti.
Okay. There you go.
That's what she had left out for me to do. And I left there with a piece of paper with 4 things written on it. I wish I still had the paper. I really do.
Yeah.
But it said something about never using admin as your login. It said something about understanding salt keys, right?
Okay.
Because he wouldn't let me do a 1-button install. He wanted me to understand how to download WordPress, how to upload WordPress, how to use FTP. And so within the course of like an hour and a half, I understood how to change my salt keys. I understood what HT access was, all of those different things. And so I started a freelance business. That's how I got in.
Well, I'm curious real quick. Everyone always kind of comes into WordPress happenstance, and it's true for everybody, obviously.
Yeah.
The question I have is, what were you doing before WordPress?
Yeah, so before WordPress, I was working in higher education for about 20 years, various colleges and trade schools here in the Rochester area. The last one I was at before I left altogether to be a freelancer in WordPress was running a massage school in Rochester and Syracuse,
Okay.
which also does not exist now. So I don't know if I just am like the business killer or what, but no, I'm not. It wasn't me.
Wow. And did you went to college also in where you are now in New York?
Yep, I did. I went to a small Christian college here in Rochester. I have an undergrad in religion and philosophy. Then I worked at University of Rochester Business School and got a free MBA while I was there at the Simon School of Business.
Well, that's awesome.
And I discovered I love marketing. And this new thing called e-commerce was hitting. It was the year 2000.
Oh my gosh.
A website. It cost about $80 to register a domain back then.
Wow.
It was ridiculously expensive. And so I did a concentration in marketing and a concentration in IT. And then also my third concentration was e-commerce.
Nice.
Yeah.
I knew part of this information. I just want to share. Sorry for the beep.
Yeah.
You can't hear it, but I'm sorry to the audience who might be hearing a ding. My daughter is texting me right now, and I wish she wouldn't, but somehow I put it on Do Not Disturb, but it's like still dinging through. It's because she's my daughter, and she can push through. I'm just going to leave it open. I'll just leave that window open. Hopefully it won't make any more noise. All right. I digress. But I mean, I know your background is heavy marketing. I didn't realize you got the free MBA. I wish I had that opportunity. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And for those who
it
don't,
was pretty cool.
and for those who don't know, you and I, we talk, I'd say at least quarterly, if not more often. You and I both have plethora of ideas. I call myself an ideation savant.
Yes.
I run a lot of my ideas by you. Some, you're always gracious. You listen. You smile. You help me brainstorm ideas like titles for the domains I go by, which is great. I bought 2 this year so far. Yeah.
It's only the 11th.
I know, but last year was a light year, so I'm trying to make up for it. No, it's okay. I let like 5 go last year. I bought 2 this year. I have a new policy, it's a matter of if I don't use it within the first year, I let it go completely. So, okay.
Yeah.
All that. So that's the background from you, from an MBA, marketing, spaghetti on the WordPress spaghetti. I love that. I didn't realize that was a story. That's your story there. So also,
Yeah.
and then from the freelance, I know you eventually took a role with GiveWP. What was that title?
I was the director of customer success.
Right. And amazing at it, by the way. And for those who don't know, GiveWP is a platform that allows people to, for nonprofits mostly, to accept donations on a WordPress website. And I mean, I have a handful of clients who all have bought it, are still members of it, and use it. Whatever, subscribers, if you will. And you've actually did demos for some of my clients who helped make the purchase. It was great. From there, GiveWP got acquired, and now you're the director of community engagement for Stellar WP. So that being said,
and GiveWP is one of the brands under Stellar.
Right. So what's your day-to-day look like now as a director of community engagement?
Yeah, so I get to play with all the socials, which is a lot of fun for me because I like to give brands voices. More than I think, one of the things that I tell people all the time when you're talking about Twitter is if all you're doing is posting your blog posts, you are not engaging with anyone.
Right.
Right. And alternately too, your Twitter account, for example, can be getting hit by a lot of unhappy people, whether it's support or they don't like the newest release or they're not happy that, they've got to update their PHP or whatever it is. And you have to be responsive to those people. So you can't just kind of like set things to go out with Twitter and not become an engagement. It's an engagement platform. Same is true of LinkedIn, same is true of Facebook, et cetera, especially if you have groups that you are running. And so I get to do a lot of that. I get to deal with a lot of angry people in Facebook groups who are upset that, who report things to me and tattle to me all the time, which is hysterical. So I get to deal with all that, but I also get to celebrate all the people that are using our different platforms, our different plugins, and doing great things with their websites and their organizations. So it's pretty exciting that way. But also Liquid Web, which is where Stellar WP is part of, enjoys the fact that I get to work with all those other things that you mentioned. So the podcast that I do, the volunteer work that I do, I didn't even put in there, like I'm also on several teams for WordPress.org, right? So and the WordPress open source project, and all of that comes within my workday as well. So being out in the community and doing the things that I do in the community is part of the work that I do for Stellar. Right.
I think people realize that about you as well as myself as well. I mean, people know that we know the community, whereas, it's been said in the past that most people who use WordPress will never go to a WordCamp. You couldn't, because there's too many people who use WordPress versus the amount of conferences that there are. The scale, it's not scalable. And this is all pre-pandemic. As an aside, I was talking to the guys from Pixel Jar, Brandon Dove and Jeff Zinn, and back in the day, pre-pandemic, in Southern California, you could go to a WordPress meetup every night of the week in Southern California because it was just that much going on. Things have obviously shifted now, 2023, which is kind of crazy. It's the first time I've said that, but the community is important and the involvement is important. And you're just there. You're always invested in people's success, which has always been amazing to me. Because I don't like people anymore. No, I'm kidding.
I do everything I can to avoid people.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very cool. So on that note, I wanted to move over into the underrepresentedintech.com and where that came from and how that's going and what's that mission, if you will.
Yeah. Sure. So Allie Nimmons and I are co-founders of Underrepresented in Tech. And we were, because of our positions in the community, constantly being asked by people, hey, do you know somebody diverse who could be a speaker? Do you know somebody diverse who we could hire for this position? I'm looking for somebody to participate in a webinar who's diverse, right? So, and it became like we were starting to feel like gatekeepers to the underrepresented community, or at the very least, like ambassadors to it, or I don't know what the right word is, but and so we thought we got to put our heads together. We're like, what if we created a spreadsheet of all these people that we know speak at events, that we know do different things, and like we started the spreadsheet, and then like a week later we met up again and we're like, this sucks. We don't need to be like creating a spreadsheet. Let's create a database that people can opt into.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't really up to me to say, hey, go talk to XYZ person and volunteer them for something,
Right.
when maybe they don't even want to be contacted, right? And so to create a database like we have of underrepresented folks, so it's not just BIPOC people, it's any way that you can think of that you could be underrepresented in technology. So whether it's age, right? So I'm over 50,
Mm-hmm.
and
Same.
that's unusual in technology, right? I'm also a disabled person, which is also,
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a woman, which is also underrepresented. As far as BIPOC, with LGBTQ,
Mm-hmm.
IA people, like, all those different things, neurodivergency, etc. And so when you join the database, you say what your underrepresentation is,
Right.
which just helps us vet, especially, when you see a cis white man
Me.
join, you're like, why is
No.
he joining, right?
Right.
But maybe he's neurodivergent, maybe
Sure.
he's on the LGBTQ community, those kinds of things. And so we don't post that. That's just for our internal use.
Right.
So we don't tell the world what your version of underrepresentation is.
Right.
But anybody can join the database if they meet one of those criteria, and it's free to join.
Right.
Anybody can search the database. So podcasters especially have been using the database, right, to find people who are underrepresented, to get diverse views
Mm-hmm.
and voices involved in their podcasts. So it isn't like white guy interviews white guys all the time, right? Which is the way it used to be.
Absolutely.
And I'm not,
No.
it's the way it was. It is
Right.
history, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do our part to do that.
It's awesome. I mean, it's funny, and I don't mean funny like comedy funny. It's interesting in the funny part being that I never really realized a lot of that. In a sense, why would I? I am the white cis guy. I don't have any. I'm not underrepresented in any capacity. But my daughter has helped me see a lot of the privilege I have, and so I go not out of my way. When I hire people for my agency side of my life, I hire if you can do the job and can I afford you. And by chance, the people that do work for me right now all identify as women. I've had one they them. And I don't care.
Non-binary.
I'm non-binary. Yeah, I could care less who you marry, what you smoke, whatever. Just be a good person and do the job. And for a long time, I was all about, and I still am. I mean, I want equality I was always pushing gender in tech. I mean, for women versus men, without even thinking about anything else until, some other things came up in the world. And I was thinking, who do I know that is underrepresented? And I think I can't think of his name all of a sudden. I interviewed him on the podcast a couple years ago after the Floyd incident. Joe Simpson.
Joe Simpson Jr. Yep.
Yeah. So Jr. So it's like one of those things. Like you don't realize. I did not realize my place in a way of I just didn't see it until I really looked in the mirror. I'm like, huh. So now most of the podcast interviews I have at the moment, if you go back and look at the last dozen, are predominantly women out of choice. Because again, like you said, I don't need to talk to another white guy. It's a balancing act, so.
Turns out their opinions are everywhere.
Yes. I mean, I've actually turned down a couple opportunities to speak on panels because I'm like, well, who's on the panel? And it'll be like 6 people look like me. I'm like, you don't need me. You don't need me again 6 times over. So I'm like, no, there's that.
Why don't you go to underrepresentedtech.com and find somebody to replace my seat?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I have literally.
The other thing that.
Put it on I put it as a tip and tool. When you guys came out with the site, it was on the tip and tool of the week. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. The other thing we do is we started a podcast of our own for underrepresented.
Yeah.
And we swear on there and we make it gets real, and it's Allie and me talking about, and we don't always agree 100% on things, right? Because we are different people from different backgrounds. And she ticks like 3 of the underrepresented boxes. I tick like 3 into the underrepresented boxes. The only ones we have in common are we're both women.
Right.
And so there's a lot that goes on there. But every week, like last week's episode, if anybody was to go back and listen to it, was about the New Year's resolutions that your business should make to make sure that you are thinking about underrepresentation and inclusiveness.
That's a good one. I like it.
So,
Yeah. So moving on to another topic here real quick, your push, and I just saw it this morning, you literally pushed out the post over on Post Status Slack about jobs Wednesday, Work Wednesday.
yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I think
WordPress Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yep.
we both started doing similar things on that at the same time in a different platform. I went to like my small audience, and Twitter a little bit, but then you went much bigger, much quicker. I was like, dang it, Michelle. But how's that working out? Do you see any successes there?
It's so funny that you say that. So just this week, I never know for sure, right? Like people don't come back to me and go, I got a job because I saw you post it.
Right.
It'd be great if you're listening to this and you did get a job, please tell me. It makes
Right.
me like, I will cry happy tears if I had a part in your success. But I do that. I also am behind the WP Career Summit that we had last year.
Oh, right.
And I am planning again for later this year. You'll see that coming out. I've got to pick a date. But anyway, this week, somebody in Slack at work on Liquid Web DM'd me and said, I am new here. I'm working with the events calendar and support. And I had to see if you were the Michelle Frechette that I have seen on Twitter and follow, etc. Because of the work that you're doing, I have the job that I have. And I literally sat at my desk and cried because I was so excited.
Yeah, I've recently...
So that is a success story right there.
That is great. I've actually found 2 jobs for 2 people in the last 60 days. Both are in the WordPress space. I won't say who and what. I didn't get any... It was just out of the connections. Well, one was a Post Status connection. I'm on Post Status. This other person wasn't.
Awesome.
Someone posted they were looking for somebody. I made that connection. And then another one was here locally through my men's group that I'm in. Another gentleman who I know from WordPress from Southern California. He lives out here now as well. Connected him with a new full-time job. And at one point, I know I had this service. You might remember I had canyoustartyesterday.com where I was trying to connect those dots.
Yes.
And it worked for a while. I just didn't really publicize it. I'm always I'm not the best marketer of my own stuff. That's obvious. That's a problem of my own.
Same.
So I let that domain go. It doesn't exist anymore. I shut it down like a year or 2 ago. It wasn't doing much. And then by chance, I get 2 people jobs, and I'm honestly not bitter at all, but I'm not going to get any commissions on that, which is totally fine. I'm happy for the people in question. Right. They're friends of mine. They're good friends of mine. So there's that. But just ironic that after, 6 months after I shut down the site, now I'm landing people work. It's kind of funny. So, but I think we both want.
This all came out of this came out of the pandemic. So we were in lockdown. And I had to take vacation time or lose it. And I was like, I'm sitting in my 1-bedroom apartment on vacation because it's lockdown.
Right.
And I thought, what could I do that could be serviceable to the community? And I created WPCareerPages.com.
Right.
So I don't post particular jobs, but if you're looking for like who has a company in WordPress I could apply to, go there. And I'm constantly adding more companies as they're putting themselves into the database there. So
yeah, smart. All right, last question for you. Well, 2 more questions. One is the question. The other one is the tools. But the first one is I want to talk about accessibility and also not just accessibility, but you mentioned earlier about your disability. You made a post, a blog post regarding your experience at Wordcamp US. Which went pretty. It was kind of widely shared.
5 days without a shower.
Yeah. So what made you write that up and share it? And what were you hoping to gain, if anything? And did anything change, do you think?
Yes, and lots of things and all of the things. So I always want to write experience to help other people. So it's not easy to write about the fact that you were in California for 5 days and probably stank on the way home because you didn't get to take a shower. Like, I was washing in the sink. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I eschewed water the whole time I was there, but I didn't get to get in the shower, right? Because it wasn't accessible, handicapped accessible or disability accessible. And so I was not the only person using a mobility device there. I saw at least 2 other people in wheelchairs. There are other people walking with canes, crutches, things like that. I also heard through the grapevine that there were people who didn't get to eat because there was not a kosher meal present, or there wasn't a soy-free meal, or the only soy-free option was also vegan, and it didn't meet their needs for proteins and things like that. So I was like, this is terrible. I was bawling at the end of the first day. I was in a ton of pain. I couldn't take a shower. I couldn't open doors. I got stuck in the bathroom, because I couldn't get the door open off of the lobby, things like that. I thought, I have to write about this. After 3 days there, when I still couldn't do so many things, and was just relying on people, which Don't get me wrong, the people there were phenomenal. But independence is really good, especially when you do have disabilities, right? You don't want to constantly be relying on other people. I can't get in a building unless somebody opens the door because there's no paddles to open the door, etc. So I did give Angela Jin, in community at post status at WordPress, the open source project part of things. I gave her heads up I was going to write an article, but I also never write an article without offering suggestions of ways to make it better. And I also gave shout outs to the things that worked really, really well. So it was a well-balanced article, I thought, anyway.
It was
taken very well. I got a direct message from Matt Mullenweg apologizing for my experiences there. And very shortly thereafter, I got messages from other people within WordCamp US and WordCamp Europe and WordCamp Asia saying, we've read your article and we're going to do better going forward and take some of what you've said into consideration when planning our next flagship events. And then Joe Simpson Jr., who we mentioned a little while ago, reached out to me and said, there's a new page on the WordCamp Organizer Handbook about accessibility now. And
Nice.
would you look at it and make sure that everything looks good? And then they are actually, and one of the things I really wanted to see was that there's at least one person on, for example, the WordCamp US organizing team, whose sole job it is to make sure that all of the accessibility issues and requirements and needs are met.
right.
And that people don't feel like they're twisting in the dark or going hungry or can't get into or out of a bathroom.
Yeah.
And so they actually are doing that for WordCamp US this year, and they
Nice.
asked me to be part of that team.
Good.
So
Good. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, so yes, things are happening.
the key, the takeaway, really, in my opinion, is that it was obviously completely unfortunate on that you had to experience it. I mean, it was terrible, but ideally, we all, as a community and as a project, learn from it moving forward. That's the key. If there's no change in the forward, and no changes made, that's a bigger issue. But I'm confident that that won't be the issue moving forward. I like to believe I'm confident in that.
Yeah. I am not blind to the fact that I have a lot of followers and that people know who I am and that I represent more than just myself, especially when it comes to disability. And so I thought if anybody had an opportunity to use their voice in our community to make things better, I felt the responsibility to do that. Not in a negative way, of course, but I just thought, if anybody was going to be heard about this, hopefully it'll be me.
Right.
And it has been.
Good. And I think it's perfectly expressed. I really do. So, well, I do appreciate your time. To wrap things up, people always like to know what we do, how we do things with what tools, software, hardware. But so I always say, what are the 3 tools you use on a daily basis to kind of make your life go, your work life kind of thing, or your life? What do you got? Sure.
So the first one is Zoom. I use Zoom all day, every day. I'm in meetings. I use it to record my podcasts. WP Motivate, WP Coffee Talk, and we use it for underrepresented tech podcasts. So we use it for all those things. Sometimes it's video, sometimes it's just audio, but Zoom does a pretty good job of recording those kinds of things. I use it for meetups, I use it for work, etc. So I don't know where we'd be in a pandemic without video tools like Zoom. The second one is Twitter. I use Twitter as a tool. I use it to communicate and have fun.
Makes sense.
But I also use it as a tool to build community. Just yesterday, or a couple days ago, I tweeted, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I'm okay with that.
I love that
and
one.
Sticker Giant responded. Sticker Giant has responded and said, this needs to be a sticker. And so I'm actually developing a sticker that I'll be able to offer for just a nominal fee to cover charges kind of thing. And I'll be putting that out before too long because Sticker Giant has encouraged it, which I thought was pretty cool. There's a whole conversation about it.
Yep.
And then the last one is a new tool that I've just discovered and I'm paying for called Shift. And Shift is a way, it's an app that sits on my Mac. I'm sure that I don't use PC. It probably is, has it for that version too. But Shift allows you to have all of your different Gmail accounts in one place.
All right.
It's so hard on Chrome to have 7 different tabs open for the 7 different Gmail accounts, and it's a pain in the rear end. Yeah. And so what Shift does is it lets me have all my calendars in one place and all of my email accounts in one place and just kind of switch back and forth between them.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to all those in the show notes as well. And just so you know, Sticker Giant, by chance and random tidbit, is located in Longmont, Colorado, where I used to live. So
that's cool.
It was about 5 minutes from my old office downtown in Longmont, which is the weirdest thing ever because I was not even using WordPress or doing anything in that. I used Joomla when I lived in Longmont. That's just a whole separate story. We dated for a week, didn't work out. Now I'm a WordPress guy. So awesome.
There you go.
Well, like I said, want to be respectful of time. So to wrap things up, where can people find you, follow you, and connect with you online?
Yeah, so if you want to follow me on any of the places, you just go to meetmichelle.online, and all of my links are there. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can buy my book through there. Like everything you could possibly want is at meetmichelle.online.
That's so good. I love that. I didn't know that site existed. I mean, that's awesome. That's brilliant. You're so
yeah.
good.
You know what? I had a Linktree account, and
Yeah.
I thought, why am I sending everybody to a Linktree who could decide they shut their doors down tomorrow? I'll just make my own Linktree.
Right. There you go.
There you go.
Smart. I mean, I used to have, I think I still have atomislive.com. So when I was presenting on stage at WordCamps, if people wanted to go do a preset tweet, I would already have it set up so they can go to, my first slide was atomislive.com. And then it was a redirect to, I forgot what the not the tweet bot, whatever the service was, click the tweet. I would update it,
Okay.
And then when people can just share that, add their own hashtags and stuff. That way, it would save people time to share socially. Same thing.
Clever.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's clever. Yeah, love it.
I can't take 100% credit for it, but I'm not going to give the person credit on this podcast because, he knows who he is. it's not bad. It's a joke. That see if he's listening to this episode, he'll reach out and say it was me. So he knows who he is. Anyway, well,
that wasn't me.
But it wasn't you, but it was somebody else. All right. Well, on that note, I do want to thank you for your time. I love your
My pleasure.
energies, and I love your friendship. I have always appreciated us being friends.
Likewise.
And, so always and forever will remain your friend,
too.
and to see you in the future at. Last question: where are you going next? What WordCamp in person?
Asia, WordCamp Asia.
Oh, that's right.
Speaking at
You're
WordCamp
going
Asia.
next month. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to go,
Yeah,
but
it's coming up.
I didn't get a ticket in time to. I mean, I can fly. People know who listen to the show. I can fly for really cheap or free. But I didn't get a ticket. I don't want to take the gamble that I fly out and don't have a ticket. Not to say I couldn't just kind of show
Yeah.
up, but we'll see. There's like a 5% chance I'll be there. So.
Well, there's a 95% chance I'll be there. I'm waiting for my passport to arrive, so
that's right.
we'll see how that goes.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing.
Bye.
Again, thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on, taking the time. You're awesome. You really are. You're one of my favorite people in the world, really, on the planet. So, and she can be found again over at meetmichelle.online, which is a very cool site. So check that out as well. All right, moving on. Segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip, it's a website called undraw.co. It's open source illustrations. Pretty cool. I just found out about it. I'm not sure where I saw it. I might have seen it like on a Instagram feed. I don't know. It's kind of neat. Checked it out. So undraw.co, open source illustrations. And if you need that kind of thing, there you go. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@kitchensinkwp.com, or use that speak pipe function on the website. If you want to support the show, I would appreciate it. You can become a Patreon, kitchensinkwp.com/Patreon. If you want to sponsor the show, you can do that too. There's a form on the website to apply. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right, bye-bye.